Welcome back to the Tech and Real Estate Podcast. Today, I'm excited to be joined by David and Sarah, a powerhouse couple combining process and design to create stunning fix and flip projects with high-end finishes, as well as beautiful and functional midterm rentals. We'll dive into their process for balancing design with practicality and how they're crafting spaces that truly feel like home. Let's get started. Hey, David. Hey, Sarah. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thank you for having us. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, super excited to have this discussion today as we don't get too much intel about design and what really is able to come into effect for a fix and flip to be successful. So before we get into that, would love to hear first about your backgrounds. Were you always interested in real estate, or is it something you stumbled on along the way?
Yeah, I'll start. So I think real estate has always been an area of interest for us. From a career standpoint, I've actually been on the technology side for my whole career, currently lead data and analytics for a local consulting firm in the Dallas area. But real estate's always kind of been in the back burner as something we wanted to really do. We even bought a duplex for a few years while we were in college. Yeah. And so really a couple of years ago was when we went, no, we really want this to be a part of our lives and what we're doing, and bought our first single family home, as a midterm rental, and have kind of been working on growing since then.
Yeah. We've always wanted to invest in real estate and have real estate kind of be a part of our portfolio, but I definitely, I've started just as a mom in the home. And so that's kind of where I've branched out from there. So, yeah.
Well, and I think what you're understating is, in the midst of, yes, raising a family with 4 kids and being married for, I think we decided yesterday, almost 24 years.
Yeah.
Sarah's always been super creative, whether it's painting or designing things, like a creative output has always been a part of who she is. And so this has just been a really cool way to take that piece of her and use it inside of how we design, construct, stage our homes. And so today, Sarah actually does a lot of home staging, working with real estate agents to help on that side as well.
Yep.
Excellent. And is the focus for medium-term rentals or different types of rentals?
Right now, that's our big push is midterm, kind of in that, 2 to 6 month bracket of time for renters. And that's kind of been a good spot for us. I don't know that we're interested too much in short term, but right now we're kind of in a buy and hold and or midterm rental kind of flow right now.
Okay, excellent. Well, love to hear the diverse background, technology, creativity coming together for real estate. And for those who may be newer, what is the difference of like a midterm rental versus a long-term rental?
Yeah, so there's a couple different components to it, but when we talk about buy and hold real estate, it tends to be long-term rental, short-term rental, midterm rental, where long-term is your standard tenant who's going there to live for an extended period of time. You're signing a 9-month, 12-month lease. The tenant you're basically just providing the home. It's generally not furnished. They're responsible for utilities, all of that kind of thing. I think people are familiar with short-term rentals where it's an Airbnb. Everything's provided. It's furnished. Utilities are provided, all of that, but you're going there for a shorter period of time. One of the markets that's really grown a lot recently is this midterm rental market, and it tends to feed 2 main avatars, if you will. One is traveling professionals. A lot of times it's medical professionals who need to go stay somewhere, like Sarah said, 2 months, 6 months, and they need a easy to get into, easy to get out of type of scenario. And then the other situation, which is the one we really focus on, is insurance stays. So you have a leak in your house, and while your construction team is putting your house back together and getting it back to where you can get there again, you need a place to stay. And that's what we focus on, mostly because we had one year a few years ago where we had to stay in like 5 different of these houses in one year due to like 4 different events that happened in 1 year to our house. And so we really kind of got a feel for, it's yes, it's a house. Yes, it needs to be furnished. But if we're going to have kids and they're going to work from home and we're going to have some schooling that's going to happen from home, there are some things that go into how you furnish it, how you make sure the kitchen is set up for full functionality, how you make sure that the design feels like a place where you have someone who is in a state of crisis because their house is in a disarray, as we had experienced, they need a place where that design aesthetic gives them a sense of the tagline for our business, which is by design homes. And that tagline is where life keeps moving. So they need an environment that feels like it's well put together, but it brings a sense of peace. Yeah. So that's what we focus on.
I love to hear that you came from that perspective of having that pain point, and just, throwing furniture into a house isn't enough, right? If you are going to be there for several months with your family, like you said, life needs to continue moving. So with that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the design aspect of it. So what makes, where do you fit into the strategy versus just, like you said, just throwing IKEA furniture and saying good luck? Where does design play?
What it was, it did come out of a lot of our own experience, in being in these homes and bringing a family into environments. One of our first houses we stayed at had like a glass dining table. And I'm like, I have a 4-year-old child. This is not going to really, does not comply and compute to work together, not compatible. And so I think one of the things for me when I'm looking at a home and looking at the design of it, I want, like you said, I want something that does feel very inviting and comfortable. And so I try to pick furniture and furnishings that are going to last. And, because it is a hard when you're moving in and out and you've got several families in and out, it can take a toll on furnishings. And so want something that's going to be hardy and last, but something that also, doesn't feel like we just pulled this out of a box and set it up here. And one of the things I try to focus on too, and it's less about design, but more about functionality, is that I think about spaces and how they're functional for families and how they might work to make a family feel like I'm at home. I remember in our experience too, we had a time where it was somebody's birthday and there wasn't a pan to make a cake and there wasn't, like a mixer or any of those types of things that you think about. Oh, in my kitchen at home, I open the cupboard and it's right there. And so, when we put our homes together for Midterm Rentals, one of the things I think about is making sure that all of those pieces, like even it really is a full functioning kitchen. You've got a baking pan, you've got a mixer, you've got things that will help you not feel like you're so displaced and that you actually have a space to live in. So
yeah, we've got a lot of positive feedback. So one of our houses is in East Dallas, so it's a 1960s build, clearly mid-century modern from a design aesthetic, and so we really leaned into that from a furnishing standpoint. And so the two things: one, every time someone goes to see the house, they're just immediately going, we want to be here. Yeah. This place meets our needs, makes us the family that's there right now. That was his comment to me. He's like, my family feels comfortable. He's like, now I actually feel okay. Yeah, the construction is delayed and it's going a little bit longer, but I have an environment where we can settle. I think the other situation I'm thinking of to the kitchen is, we had a lady staying there. She was a older retired individual, and she had just, when she first moved in, had just expected to have to go box up half of her kitchen at her house to bring it here because she cooked all the time. And so, it came down to things like finding a cheese grater, finding a crock pot. And what she told me was, she's like, by a month or 2 months in, I suddenly changed my mentality and went, I expect it to be here. I'm going to look for it because probably whatever I'm looking for is in this kitchen. And it was. And so I thought that was a really good kind of testament to really how well you did in fitting that out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. So it's not just about design aesthetically, but also functionality. And I like that you mentioned like real world scenarios where you'll be expecting to have certain items or certain things in place and you're considering it. So I can imagine that there's also that balance, right, of cost, of how much the furnishings are in relation to how durable they are. So how do you manage that aspect?
Well, I mean, honestly, part of it we try and find stuff secondhand, whether it's Facebook Marketplace or we've got several good resale consignment stores in the area. And so we'll look there for things that are hardy and sturdy, like dining room tables or bed frames and things like that are, kind of your more hard goods that you can easily wipe down and clean but are going to continue to last. And so that helps on our cost side. And then honestly, some of it's just we're looking for higher quality things, but we're also looking for things that we can get at a discount or through trade programs or wholesale programs that we can sign up for as a business and as individuals. So, that's one of the things for us. And it is a lot of it is a lot of groundwork and research and, a lot of time on the computer, looking at sales, looking at items to see when's a good time to purchase and that type of thing.
Doing a bit of tracking, huh?
Yeah. Lots of tracking.
And I think it's probably there's a difference, a different angle if we're talking about a house that we're, buying and furnishing for a midterm rental,
right,
versus something that we are buying, fixing up to sell, and then staging from that standpoint, right? Some of those considerations would be different. On the furnishing side, it's going to be more about the design aesthetic, and less about necessarily the hardiness of it, because we're just trying to sell. We're trying to get people in so they can see it. And then on just the construction side, a lot of it depends on what's the target, right? So when we go in and we're buying a house to renovate it, is understanding what's that ARV, what's that value that we're going for when we sell it, and what are people who are in that market at that level going to expect, right? Yep. Because if we're going in and we're going to sell this for $250 to $300,000, that means we should go with a certain type of countertop, a certain quality of cabinet, a certain quality of floor. If we're going to try and sell something for $1 million, that's going to be a different set of components that have to go into that to make sure that when people go in, they're seeing that the quality that they're expecting at that level of home. And that's kind of our situation. The renovation that we're currently in is closer to that $1 million side. And so there we're doing things like full custom cabinets. We're doing a really nice leathered quartzite countertop. And Sarah has kind of really leaned in to cottage. What do you call it?
Modern cottage.
She's told me that a bunch of times. It's a modern cottage feel. So there's a lot of thought going into the aesthetic around the colors and even down to the trim. So we ripped out all the trim and went with more of a craftsman trim with kind of some very specific appointments over the doors. That's all designed to kind of lean into this modern cottage look that we'll be going to market with here in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's exciting. And I think you have a really great methodology where it's, understand the level of finishes correctly based on the ARV. So for those who maybe are brand new to real estate, ARV is a new term, how to judge, a maintained property versus a luxury property. Like, how would you go into a market and be able to define like what level of upgrades you should do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So ARV, after repair value. So the idea, obviously, if you're renovating a property to sell, is you're buying it at some level of discount. You're going to then add some value, whether it's just doing cosmetics or you're going to add square footage, whatever you're going to do, you're going to add value to it. And you've got some assumption of when I'm done with that, the ARV will be X. That's the after repair value. I think for us, the main thing is really looking at the comps, in and around that area. Like, that's the big thing. So the comparables, because, some neighborhoods, they're not expecting kind of a more modern finish, whatever's the most current, right? So the neighborhood that we live in, that our house is in, it's all kind of early 2000s builds. So it's not 70s and 80s. And so, the builder grade is okay. It's nicer. It's decent. Can you get an uplift if you go in and fully renovate it? You can, but you're not going to get a dramatic uplift. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be careful in that kind of neighborhood not to go in and say, oh, I bought it for $500,000. I'm going to make it $800,000. You're not going to do that with just finishes, because you're not going to get, at least from a Texas market standpoint, everything tends to be on price per square foot. You're not going to be able to drive up your price per square foot significantly. Mm-hmm. That's different than the house we're working on right now, where this is in Parker, Texas. So it's Parker, Texas, for those who don't know the DFW areas, is in North DFW, but not so far north. But still has a bunch of really big lots. It's all 1 acre, 2 acre, 4 acre type of properties. Mm-hmm. And the street where we bought this property, we had some very specific comps where the as is, these are all 1970s builds. So things that were 1970s were selling at, X dollars, right? They were selling for $500,000 and $600,000. But on our street, there is an $850,000 and a $900,000 property where they had gone in and done a
significant,
decently high-end renovation, right? And so really that's how we were looking at it. Went, okay, that's a good gap. That 500 to 600 up to 850 to 900, that's a good gap. That's a place where we can go in and invest what will probably end up being about $230,000, and still make a return as we get it out. But it made a real big difference on certain design decisions like the ceiling. So this had 1970s, it's an 8-foot ceiling right across the board.
Yeah.
But when we're looking at our comps, all the comps, either in their original build or after the repair, the rehab, had elevated ceilings. And so that was, even though that was a significant increase in the construction, if you've never raised a ceiling, you know, there's the structural engineering of, we've got to have a beam that's got to be this long to carry this much load. There's the actual framing in of what used to be a nice flat ceiling and now has all kinds of angles because of the roof line. There's the electrical that has to be accounted for because that electrical used to run through it, and now all those wires are not long enough. The HVAC had to be adjusted, all new kind of lighting structures. So it was a major undertaking, part of the project. But again, looking at what's around, that's what's going to be necessary. If we didn't do that, then there's no way that we would end up getting the value that we're expecting at the end.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You're looking at what recently sold to be able to understand the level of finishes you would require. And Dave and Sarah, you both told me your backgrounds, tech and design. So how do you end up solving a problem like being able to raise a ceiling? Is it, you know, someone in your team, or is it you learn a lot of knowledge yourself? How did you do it?
Well, you know, I'm going to give you the standard. The initial learning is all YouTube, right? That's the truth, right? And then it's, I think for us, like you said, our background is not construction. Part of it was some real hands-on learning experiences. So the year that I mentioned where we lived in a bunch of different properties, what was interesting about that year was the first event we had a really great general contractor who I was able to be really close with and kind of walk that journey with him and understand what needed to be done. And then the second time it was our master bathroom. And so it was a complete master bathroom renovation where we did the work. So it was learning how to be hands-on. And that's where we learned how to do tile and level floors and change out subfloor and build cabinet doors and anyway, all of those kind of things. And then the third, because there was three, I was actually four that year. It was a downstairs water leak, a gas leak, an upstairs water leak, and then a downstairs water leak again in 1 year. So the fourth time, I ran the project as a general contractor, but subbed out everything else. So basically, like in 1 year, I kind of got baptized, if you will, into watch somebody who does it really well, do the hands-on work myself, manage the work. And so that kind of gave us a foundation to go, okay, we at least understand the order that things need to happen and how we put them together. But then after that, I just lean on community. So if it's something that's truly outside of my area of expertise, we're part of a community called the Sub 2 community with Pace Morby that is really strong in the DFW area. And so I always know that if there's something that's more than what I can handle, I can reach out. And so that's been a key part of it. And so I would just lean into that. So even with this flip recently, we had a problem where our cabinet maker disappeared. That's what I would say. So without going into detail of that, we had to quickly find a new cabinet maker. And so Sarah and I showed up at a meetup. We're talking to them about this challenge, and someone we knew was like, well, you need to talk to this person over here who's a really high-end painter, tell them your problem. And then she gave us 2 cabinet makers, and we ended up hiring one of those, and that person was available, and they'll get the cabinets done in 2 weeks. And so it was another really key part if you want to get into real estate is you've got to connect to people. You don't want to go it alone because there's a lot of safety that comes from being able to connect with other people and leverage their experience as well.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah. I would argue that the networking aspect and connecting with folks is, number one. But number 2 is also willingness to learn. And I am actually mind blown that within a year's time frame, you guys were really hands on trying to be the studious ones of learning from general contractor to doing the work yourself. And tremendous, learning experience that you both gained. Are there any interesting stories in that year of I don't know if I want to continue doing the work myself, or things you learned?
Well, I think one of the things having done that bathroom is that you were like, well, I never want to do tile again. So we did discover the things that we were not fond of in the hands-on experience that we're like, well, we will hire someone next time for this part.
I think I probably don't feel that way. It's sheetrock. I don't like.
Yeah, he doesn't like sheetrock for sure.
The tile part was so just quick background, right? So we had a leak downstairs and had to do the whole downstairs. Literally when that was finished, we smelled gas in behind our stove, had plumbers come in, and basically every pipe in our house was leaking.
Gas.
Your gas is generally under, like, I want to call it 2 PSI, and they come and they put 5 to 10 on there to test it, and everything was leaking. So we had to replace all the gas pipes. The week that got done, water started pouring out of from our upstairs bathroom down into the living room or into the kitchen.
Yeah.
So we're basically in November, December. It was quite cold that year. And so what I remember is your dad.
My dad.
God bless him.
Yeah.
So her parents live nearby, and he was helping me. And so I'm doing subway tile, kind of in a surround and up a shower, which is a bunch of cuts, right? It's just a bunch of cuts along the way. And so he was taking the tile that I was marking, running downstairs we'd bought like a wet tile saw. He's out. It's like, I don't know if it was snowing, but it was close
cold.
To snowing. So he's out there shivering, right? As he's cutting individual subway tiles and running back up to me.
Yeah.
Again, you learn some things. Knowing what I know now, we would probably have just gone and bought one of those, just kind of scores the top and breaks it and just cut them in place. I'm sure if people are listening, they're going, wow, why was he running downstairs to a large wet tile saw for some subway tile, which is a totally reasonable. But we didn't know what we were doing.
No.
So we had gone to Home Depot and bought a rigid wet tile saw and went, well, this will work. Her dad was a huge help. But I remember him, he just was coming up and he was shaking. His hands were cold. And, but we got it done.
Yeah, that was going into that next year, the January, February was when we had the huge ice storm here in Texas that everything got in the negatives for several days. Many people without power. We had power, but it was alternating off and on for every 2 or 3 hours. And so that's where the last thing happened was one of the pipes in the wall froze in the kitchen. So we had just our brand new kitchen, 5-6 months old. We had to rip out one whole wall and cabinets and tile and everything to repair that, and the floor, half the floor in there. So it's lots of transition for our family, lots of transition for our kids, starting school in one house and ending school in another house because we moved that many times throughout the year. But it was a good learning experience for both of us. And, I got to hone some design skills along the way and picking tile and picking colors and, fixtures and all kinds of things that I wouldn't have had really the opportunity to do had we not been kind of dunked into.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like there was, some good opportunities that came out of that, and that you're continuously able to face adversity, through a project, but continue forward with the network that you have and your dad being MVP. So now that you're at the stage that maybe you don't want to do tiling, but you know it well, like, do you think that has helped you in future projects when you're reviewing work?
100%. Like, yeah. I really value a lot having done everything once. This is what I would, so like at least having put my hands to it once, because then I know, one, I know what it takes. Two, I start to get an understanding of, every job has varying levels of quality and varying levels of building standards that you can do it at, right? Mm-hmm. And so you need to know. So let's take tile and waterproofing, for example. So you have everything from builder grade. I put some green sheetrock up that's mildew resistant, and then I put tile on top of it and called that good, to I've at least done some concrete board and then maybe done some waterproofing layers on top of that, to I'm going to do a full Schluter system that's kind of a foam based, fully waterproof across the board, right? There's a lot of different levels there. And so knowing what's important to us, knowing those construction standards, having done it myself, really kind of helps with the conversation. I remember just walking through with the new cabinet guy, woodworking is kind of my own things I do want to do and love. Like, woodworking is my passion. That's what the shop that we've got here at the house is related to, is that's what I love to do. So cabinet making, I'll talk. to this guy for a while. And that's where it really helps me give clear examples. Like, this is exactly what I expect in this situation.
Right.
I expect these kind of edges, and I expect it to kind of come down in this way and connect in this way, because I know the difference between if they do that exactly right and how it's going to end up looking versus not. So 100% doing some of the work, I think makes managing the contractor process much, much better.
Yeah.
I love that piece of advice. Try to do it once so that you can at least understand it, the framework behind it. And your story is very compelling in terms of how much work you both have been able to put for yourselves based on your prior experiences. And now at this stage, it seems like you have two sides, right? So it's design for midterm rentals, and it's also fix and flips. Can you give me a little more context on like what's the volume you're doing? Is it consistent, or one part of the year you kind of shift from one business to the other? How does it look today?
Yeah, we're still, I would call it, taking on new things and learning. So we're not at scale at this point in time, right?
Yeah.
So a couple years ago, we bought our first midterm rental. And so that was figuring that out, learning that, kind of maintain that over the last year. This year, we've really taken on two new things. One is midterm rental property management. So I'm managing a midterm rental for somebody else. But that's been a learning experience. And then buying a house just to flip, right? And that this really actually has been our first one that we bought just for that purpose. And so I think, for where we're at in life, like taking on 1 to 2 new major learnings is right.
Yeah.
And so when we get done with this, then we'll really sit down and consider, okay, are we going to try and turn the fix and flip into the scalable business that we do a lot? I definitely want to buy 1 or 2 more midterm rentals. And then eventually where we really want to head to is two future learnings that maybe are 2025. One is ground up construction. So want to really get into full build, buy a lot and build it. And the second thing is, really want on the buy and hold side to get into, I'll call it medium-sized multifamily, right? I would love to find a way to buy a 30 to 50 unit, and have that kind of as part of our portfolio. But we're just, we are busy people. That's what I would say, right? I think I mentioned we have 4 kids here. They're like 14, 12, 8, and 6, with sports all the time and all that, right? So life is very busy. And so while we are trying to grow real estate and learn, my day job is a more than full-time day job. Sarah's staging houses and doing accounting for my dad's, my parents. They have a consulting and bookkeeping business, and she does bookkeeping for them. We are both very active in our church. So life is very busy. So it's like, we're trying to grow in an aggressive and learn in an aggressive, but steady pace, without taking on more than what we feel like is the right things for us to put our hands to at this point in time.
Yeah.
I love the steady pace, right? Sometimes we hear that you have to acquire 10 deals within a year in order to even like be on the map for real estate. But that's not really the case. Your life could really change, and your learnings as well, with just one, project a year, maybe 2. So I think that's fantastic. And then Sarah, for you, is there like a dream design that you would like to do in the future?
That's a good question.
Oh,
I like that
dream
question.
design. I don't know. I haven't even thought about that. I think it would be cool to, I'm kind of getting some of that in this, flip that we're doing, because I'm getting to really pick things from the ground up almost as if it was a new build, because that would be something. So I think it's kind of getting, I don't know, kind of increasing my appetite for it.
Like if you think about the houses, like new builds that we look at, like is there anything in there that you're like, oh, I want to take that on?
I don't know, maybe, like a new house but being able to fully, I for one love to marry function and design. And so I think, really looking inside of spaces and seeing, how to have something that really is truly functional for family and for life, but then having a beautiful design and aesthetic that, makes you want to be there and you want to interact with it. So I think doing something like that for a whole house would be.
Right. So like having the blueprint that you could start with, from ground up.
Yeah. I think 2 thoughts as she's talking. I think one is just, with this one, this really has been a whole house. We're taking a 2,600 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2-bath. We're making it a 4-bedroom, 3-bath. So we're adding a whole new bathroom, but it's selecting all of the lighting fixtures, all of the plumbing fixtures, right? 3 different bathrooms worth of tile. So it is basically choosing for the entire house. And I think so the scale was much more in terms of jumping up. And so being able to go to the next level will be interesting.
Yep.
I think the other thing I was thinking about with Sarah from a functional standpoint, it's okay if I brag on her a little bit, right? That's acceptable, right? So this house, it was closed, floor plans. So obviously we're knocking the wall out to kind of create a big kitchen, dining, living area. But right off the kitchen, was a room that it's about 6 by 10. And it was the combination of a small pantry with the laundry room right off the kitchen. And so this was Sarah's idea, was to basically, we took the laundry room out of there, moved it around to another room. So we had to move all the plumbing and electrical and all of that, and created this really cool mud room, by splitting other room in half. But what that allowed us to do was take that 6 by 10 and make it a full walk-in pantry. And so if you think about features, a really cool functional feature for a house that's got 4 bedrooms, you're going to be able to put a family in there. Having a 6 by 10 walk-in pantry is a really cool function for a house that size. And I think that was just a really incredible functional idea. And so then we built like the cabinets in there, because we're going custom cabinets. We didn't have to do doors because it's in the pantry. It's got these pull outs so you can put your vegetables in there. And anyway, it's just going to be a really cool functional area just by making that decision to go, let's move the laundry out, let's adjust that room, and let's make this cool space.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm trying to visualize it, and would love if you guys could send, like, I don't know, maybe a Google Drive after this of a couple photos. I think that would be really awesome for the audience. Perfect. So for folks who, at this stage, they want to get into real estate, potentially, maybe fix and flip, maybe even, doing midterm rental, but they have a family and they're like, how do I get into this? Right? Like, I can't just, all of a sudden cut back like 10 hours of my time, within a week out of nowhere. So do you believe that there should be like a gradual progression to taking on-site projects, go all in, have a conversation first with family? What are some suggestions that you have?
You just mentioned having conversations with family. I think that one of the things for us is that we have been with our kids, and even with, both of us, we're fortunate. Both of us, our families are very close to us. Our parents are both nearby. We have brothers and sisters nearby and everything. And so very tight knit. And so to be able to have those conversations with them, and there is much wisdom inside of counsel like that. And so I think it's helped us, and we've always been really clear communicators with our kids on what we're doing as a family and things that we're diving into. And so I think starting with conversations is really good. But then I do think too, some people have the ability to ramp up really quickly, and, whether it's you've got big reserves of capital sitting somewhere that you can I need somewhere to put this or whatever, but, or just personality wise, just really running and gunning. But for us, just taking it one thing at a time really helped, because we could get a taste for, oh, I like this. Oh, I don't really like this, and figure it out before we're too far down the road where we wouldn't have opportunity to pull back, or we've, gone too far. So, that's what I'm thinking.
I think that's a great answer. The reason I asked you to go first is because in our relationship, as a married couple, the working together is super important.
Yeah.
So I'm probably let's go all in. Let's just go take over the world tomorrow.
Yeah.
And she by nature is let's think, right? Let's do that. And I think, again, to the us today, like if I was on this extreme and she was on that extreme, we're probably both more like this closer now. Like she accepts more risk now, and I'm a little more thoughtful. I don't think that there is a right answer to what Sarah was saying, to the question of, do you go fast? Do you go slow? Because life circumstances, financial there's all kinds of other things that go into that. I think what is important is that you figure out a way to take action, because the most learning is going to be when you actually figure out when you start to take action. We definitely spent a good amount of time like researching and listening to Bigger Pockets podcasts and all that kind of thing before we really got started. So there was some learning time, but the real learning is in when you actually figure out how to take action, right? And so because I can do all the spreadsheets in the world and the thinking about it in the world, but until we bought this property with a combination of hard money and private money, and I had to suddenly start looking at how do I manage the draw process and the cash flow that goes along with it, and made some mistakes that had to get some additional help, let's put it that way. As we went through, it's like, it all made sense in my logical brain, but until you take some action, you're not going to know. And so I think that's where, whether that taking action is, you're in a position where you can go out and buy one, you got to just figure out what strategy you want to go try. Yeah. Are you trying to get into a midterm rental type of situation? That's a great business. Are you trying to get into fix and flips? You got to figure out where you want to go. And then you got to start taking some steps. And whether you're in a position where you can take those steps alone or go be a part of a community and be a part of a team, there are an infinite number of ways to take action. Yeah. But you do have to take action if you're going to learn and grow, because you don't know what you don't know until you do that.
Really great points of wisdom. Taking action, having conversations, having a network, all these things can help to propel you for the next steps. So David and Sarah, I know you guys have so much knowledge to share. Where can people follow you to learn more about your journey?
Instagram is probably my biggest place. It's at Brown David Aaron, because that's what was available. Aaron's my middle name. So Brown David Aaron, AARON, is that. Our business, By Design Homes, has at bydesign.homes. And then our podcast, we have a podcast as well. It's called the David and Sarah Podcast. And if you just Google the David and Sarah Podcast on YouTube or Spotify, you'll find it.
My Instagram is Sarah Kanga, SarahKanga.
Yeah, thank you so much. Looking forward to continue to watch your journey and really appreciate your time and everything that you've shared.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. This was great.
Yeah, it was really good. Thank you so much.